In NXOS, we have different user modes. We have the exec, global interface command, and interface-specific configuration. Here, I'm going to demonstrate the different user modes in NXOS in the command line interface. I'm going to open up my PuTTY SSH session into a Nexus 7000. I'm going to switch to VDC F2 aggregation. Within the F2 aggregation VDC, I'm going to show you the different modules I have in here. So for example, if I look at module 2, it's an M132 card, and you can see that here. Module 7 is an F2E, or excuse me, just an F2 I/O module. So I'm going to pick on interface Ethernet 748. So if I do a show run, here I'm in exec, Ethernet. You can see I can't type. Okay, here's interface Ethernet 748. You see it was an F2 card, so the default type is a switch port. So I need to go into global configuration and do interface Ethernet 7/48. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a no switch port. Okay, what's that going to do? That's going to go ahead and make it a layer 3 interface on interface Ethernet 748 because I'm in the interface specific configuration for the interface. I'm just going to pick an IP address and give it a 192.168.0.1. And if you notice, I can do a /23 for the CIDR notation. I don't need to call out the specific subnet mask. I can just do a /23. So even if I'm in interface configuration mode, I can do a show run interface Ethernet 748. In here, you see I changed it from a switch port to a layer 3 interface, and it has the CIDR / notation versus the actual subnet mask. So one thing to call out here, one thing you've noticed, irregardless if this is a 1 gig interface or a 10 gig interface, everything within NXOS is denoted as Ethernet. So whether I have a 100 gig interface or a 40 gig interface, everything's Ethernet module or slot interface number. So let me just do a little bit from the exec show run. And if I look at the question mark here, I can go ahead and look at all these different components that are running within this virtual device context. So I can just do a show run, and let's just say I want to pick on VLAN, for example. That'll just show me my VLAN configuration of the running config. So that sort of concludes the command line interface for global configuration as well as interface configuration. So if we look at supervisor modules and management interfaces, here I have the supervisor module 1. Here I'm showing a picture of a supervisor module 2E. Now if I look at the differences, the major, if you look at the similarities, I see common LEDs and status ports and console ports. So I have common LED and status, I have console ports for asynchronous communication and management interface. This is referenced as MGMT0. Then I have USB host ports on the supervisor 2. I have common compact flash and USB slots, and then I have the reset button. The one thing that's different between the supervisor module 1 and the supervisor module 2 or 2/E is the CMP interface. The CMP interface is a true out-of-band management Ethernet port that you can go ahead and get to the control plane part of the supervisor module. The supervisor 2 or 2E does not have that feature set. And if I look at the virtual device context, which I'll explain later in this section, we've increased the scale here. As you can see, I'm highlighting the different hardware. So if I have a SUP2E or a SUP2 or a supervisor 1, this is my VDC scale, meaning that with a SUP2E, I can do 8 virtual device contexts plus the admin VDC. With the SUP2, I can do 4 VDCs plus the admin VDC. In the SUP1, I can do 4 VDCs plus the admin VDC as well. If I do a show interface, MGMT0, this is the interface of the management interface for this VDC, meaning that it has its own IP address allocated to that. If I switch back to the default VDC and show interface MGMT0, I have a unique IP address as well. This is how I can delineate and provide roles-based access control and different user privileges between virtual device contexts, because each one has its own management identity or management IP address to go ahead and connect to. And then if I look more specifically at management interfaces, I have different protocols that I can leverage to get into here. Here I just sort of cut a window within PuTTY that says, hey, the default's SSH, but I have different ways to get into that management port on a per VDC basis, meaning that I can come in via Telnet. Telnet is disabled by default. SSH is enabled by default. I also have XML, extensible markup language, to where I can get into the management port, as well as SNMP. These are different types of access methods, and you can turn them on or off and be custom on a per virtual device context basis.